So we are talking about the Monstrous Compendium for Eldraine Creatures today. We are moving between buildings right now, so there's going to be a little bit of noise because we are having to do this in the lobby and we don't have a studio space, so thank you for your patience. What is it? I'm very excited for this.
Monstrous Compendium Volume 4, Eldraine Creatures is what we're talking about. It is a collection, a compendium of monsters that are from the Magic the Gathering world of Eldraine.
This is a lot of monsters.
It's 25 monsters.
And for those that are not familiar with this world, can you describe that Magic the Gathering setting?
Sure, Eldraine is Magic's fairy tale setting, basically. It's a world of knights who will go off and quest into the fairy tale wilderness and encounter fairies and gingerbread golems and goose hydras and turtle hydras and the classic fairy tales that a lot of us grew up with have sometimes twisted representations in the world of Eldraine. So the minstrosity is part of the sort of Hansel and Gretel analog in Eldraine, which is Sweet Tooth Village, this witch-created place where candy horrors run amok.
Again, this is the quirky, weirder version of the Feywild as well. This ties in very nicely if you liked, Witchlight.
Right.
Another book that we did. This is more monsters that can add to your campaigns. I
Definitely.
love Fey monsters.
Yes, there's 3 small fairies and 4 high Fey, they're called in Eldraine, which are Fey creatures that are in the CR 11 to 13 range, which is a pretty sweet spot for powerful Fey, I think, in the game. There's also a tie-in to Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants, which is nice. If you want to take your giant-themed campaign in a very Jack and the Beanstalk sort of route, there's more monsters in here, like a beanstalk worm.
Perfect.
Yes. The Tempest Heart is a lightning elemental sort of stag that lives in the clouds where the storm giants are. So all sorts of options and possibilities here.
What I like about monsters for any D&D setting is this is often the nice gateway into playing D&D or being excited for D&D because we all can relate to monsters. or we all can appreciate a good monster. I would like to run through all these monsters because it's a sizable amount. We've got the Archon of Boundaries. What is that?
So Archons in Magic are celestials. They're sort of incarnations of white mana, but they're less angelic than angels. So they often show up in settings where angels don't feel quite right, but you want an angelic flavor. So we had Archons in Theros, where they were very rigid, lawful good forces in the world. In Ravnica, Archons are connected with the Guild of Azorius. Here, they're very sort of fey celestials. They always appear as hooded riders on a flying mount. And here that flying mount is a winged stag.
You mentioned the Beanstalk Worm.
Beanstalk Worm.
So, this would be fun for you specifically.
So worms in Magic, and that's worm with a U, not a O or a Y.
Yeah.
But they are limbless, wingless dragons in Magic. So the Beanstalk Worm is a great big worm that hangs out on beanstalks that are connected to giant realms. And it can sprout beanstalks up around it and do the things you expect worms to do, like swallow you whole.
There is a Deathless Rider. I'm already interested.
These are the Lich Knights of Eldraine. They've shown up on just a couple of cards, but they're the sort of mysterious undead riders that haunt the outer wilds far away from the human realm. We've
got the Dunbarrow Witch.
The Dunbarrow Witch is a human warlock-flavored NPC spellcaster, but it's the kind of witch, fairy tale witch who might be luring people to gingerbread houses or animating objects to do their bidding, or making poisoned apples, or gazing into mirrors.
Perfect.
Pretty much what you expect.
It's on the tin. We got the Fairy Borrower. Can you tell me about that?
So there's 3 fairies in here, the Borrower, the Pathlighter, and the Pest. And those correspond to Magic cards in the 3 fairy colors of blue, white, and black. So the blue fairies, the Fairy Borrowers, are pixie or sprite-like. They're tiny, they're mischievous, and this was basically an opportunity for us to do a pixie or sprite-like stat block with a little bit more going on, more interesting stuff.
Awesome. And then you mentioned the Fairy Pathlighter.
The Fairy Pathlighter is the white fairy. They are human-sized, and again, almost sort of angelic figures. They will hold lanterns in the dark in the wild to guide travelers home or guide them astray, maybe.
A little bit of will-o'-wisp
Yes.
vibes off of them.
Yep.
We've got the Fairy Pest.
So the fairy pest is the black aligned fairy. It's also small, looks like a child except for the scraggly feathered wings on its back. They are the most mischievous and often hurtful of the fairies.
Hence the pest
Yes.
element there. Yeah. We got the Ginger Brute, which I love, and this could go a number of ways.
The Ginger Brute is an animated gingerbread cookie.
Perfect.
It's fast.
That's terrifying.
It's got a speed of 60 feet.
Okay.
Run as fast as you can. You can't catch
What
me.
size is the Ginger Brute?
Tiny.
Okay, it's tiny, but brute.
Yes, because it's not friendly.
Okay. All right.
Turns out that wasn't vanilla extract in the unlabeled bottle.
Perfect. I cannot wait to use these in my game. Oh, wow. The Goose Mother. We're back to Goose.
I didn't intend for the giant goose in Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants to blow up quite the way it did, but I love it. And so then I saw Jesper's art for the Goose Mother, this goose hydra, in the Magic set, and I knew it had to be in here.
We've got the High Fae Imposter.
So there's 4 high Fae stat blocks. I mentioned before they are in the challenge rating 11 to 13 range. So these are the noble Fae of the Fae court out in the wilds of Eldraine, opposed to the human realm. Talion, the kindly lord, is the leader of these Fae, but then the imposter is sort of a tricky shape changer. The kind guard is a martial warrior Fae who might serve as a palace guard to Talion. The High Fae Mage, as the name suggests, is very magic-y. And then the High Fae Noble are the highest echelons of the Fae courts. So they're really useful for populating Fae domains in any D&D setting, really.
Perfect. And then we've got the Knight of Eldraine.
Knight of Eldraine is sort of a very basic sort of human knight figure with one trait that links it to the 5 courts of Eldraine, which is advantage on checks and saving throws connected to one ability score. The 5 human courts all espouse one virtue. So the red court of Embereth holds courage as the highest virtue. So Knights of Embereth get advantage on wisdom saves and wisdom checks. That sort of thing.
Perfect. The Nightmare Haunt. I'm very excited for this.
So part of the story of the Wilds of Eldraine set is that Ashiok, the nightmare-wielding planeswalker, is here and is connected to one of the 3 most powerful witches in the realm to spread a sleeping curse. It's basically a Sleeping Beauty story, but you've got these nightmare haunts that are connected to Ashiok who are feeding on the dreams and nightmares of people. You've got people who are sleepwalking around or even fighting in their sleep. So it's definitely got a eerie vibe to it. Then the Nightmare Haunt is sort of a walking incarnation of this wicked slumber.
I'm afraid to ask about the Ogre Chitterlord.
So there's actually 2 ogre cards in the Magic set that are sort of magic using ogres. And that was a hole I thought about filling in Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants and didn't get to. So it was sort of an added bonus for me that I got to throw in this ogre sort of witchy creature. They're called Chitterlords because they can summon rat swarms. But it's a magic-y ogre.
Perfect. I can't wait to make a cranium rat of that. So, Red Tooth Werefox.
So the red-tooth elves lived in a castle out in the wilds and were cursed by a witch to become werefoxes. So every night they turn into werefoxes. So this is a stat block for that cursed elf werefox.
We got the Sewer King. That's gonna be fun.
Sewer King is a human-sized rat infused with demonic blood who got sort of a Pied Piper story going on in the Magic set. Lord Skidder of Edgewall is the exemplar of the Sewer Lord.
I love the rat stuff. We've got a Snapping Hydra, which, okay.
This one is inspired by a single card in the original Eldraine set from a couple of years ago. The Snapping Hydra. It's a turtle Hydra.
Yeah.
Basically, concept artists who worked on Eldraine came up with some wacky Hydra ideas, and one of them was a turtle that made it onto a card. It's in my Hydra commander deck, and so it had to be in here too.
I love that, like, for this project, like one of these things got in there because it was in your commander deck. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
This is everything I need to know.
I mean, it's a turtle hydra. It can pull into
It's
its
hard
shell.
not to add Turtle Hydra. Yeah,
Yes.
that's fair.
Yes.
We've got the Spectre of Night.
So specters in Magic are sort of the flip side of archons. They are incarnate forces of black mana that again look like hooded riders on winged mounts. In the case of the Spectre of Night, it's actually the mount that's in charge. It sort of attaches a corpse to its back to animate them both.
Okay.
So it is a creepy undead flying thing that haunts the night and screams like a banshee.
Perfect. All right. That's terrifying. I hate it and love it at the same time.
That's the goal.
We mentioned before the Sweet Tooth Horror, which you can't really go
Sweet Tooth
wrong
Horror.
with that title.
Right. I mean, so the art is this monster made out of candy canes called the Minstrosity, but you can also use it for gingerbread things or sweet donut things. There's a lot of candy monsters connected again to the Hansel and Gretel idea.
Yeah.
There's also a sidebar I put in that entry that talks about how you might use different oozes as, a gelatinous cube. It would taste like fruit, perhaps, but it's still basically a gelatinous cube of Jell-O wandering through Sweet Tooth Village. And you might have butterscotch pudding as ochre jelly or chocolate pudding as a black pudding. I had a little bit too much fun.
That's probably the most horrific thing of dying from an ooze or
What does it
gelatinous
taste
cube.
like?
Is like, oh, but it tastes great
Yeah.
the whole time. That's a weird way to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you thought about ooze flavoring, though. That's exciting for me. I think about gelatinous cubes a lot, as we have established today. We've got the Tempest Heart.
So the Tempest Heart is an elemental stag that lives up in the clouds with storm giants. So again, there's sort of a tangential connection to Big B there as a way to add flavor to something you're doing up in a Jack and the Beanstalk style setting. Lives at the top of beanstalks, of course.
So we have Tree Folk.
Tree folk appear in lots of Magic settings.
Yeah.
They're a lot like treants in D&D. I decided to include them in here because the art for them suggests that they're more magical than treants are. So this is sort of like a treant druid kind of thing with more magic stuff going on and more of a fairy tale flavor again.
Okay, so that brings us to the Witch Kite. Tell me about that.
Right. So kite is a word that Magic often connects to dragons. We have a lot of cards that are named Hellkite.
Yeah.
So the Witch Kite is a dragon with a witchy flavor. So it's kind of like a dragon warlock that feels very evil, very nasty, and witchy.
I'm excited for Dragon Warlock, yeah. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me about the Witch Stalker.
So the Witch Stalker is a sort of giant wolf that has shown up on Magic cards in a number of different sets. But the idea in Eldraine is it's a big wolf-like creature that hunts magic. So hunts witches or other sources of powerful magic in the wilds.
What was fun about this project for you? You were at D&D, you were at Magic the Gathering, and now you bring in some of the Magic Gathering for this particular project. I love all things Fae, so I know why I am excited for this, but what was exciting for you?
I love sort of living in the world in between the two brands, or going back and forth between them. I worked on the Magic team for like 6.5 years after 14 years on D&D. Back on D&D now, but being able to have my fingers in both pies is a lot of fun. And it's just, a tremendous rich source of inspiration to have this set of cards full of gorgeous art and use that art to inspire our design. It's a pleasure we often don't get to let the visuals of a thing define how we express it in the game.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about Magic the Gathering. You have corresponding art every time.
Yes, and a ton of it, and it's awesome. But it was just a ton of fun to put these monsters together, to think about the holes in D&D that we're filling, giving you more cool and interesting Fae to play with, giving you more things you can tie into your Witchlight campaign or your giant-themed campaign. Just this fun spectrum of cool things to toss in and completely surprise your players with.
Do you have any advice? You having helmed this project with so many different monsters, do you have any advice on how to run them or incorporate them into your current campaign? What I like is also the surprise factor of my players. Some of my players are also dungeon masters, or they're very, very well schooled on all the monsters. So being able to throw something random at them can be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty is you can really just pick any one of these 25 monsters and use it in the game you're running now, or you can build a whole campaign themed around these and related monsters. There's also a page at the start of this that talks about other, mostly people-like creatures that live in Eldraine, pointing you to other stat blocks in the monster manual. The Witch Kite entry has a section talking about other dragons of Eldraine, taking, here's card art and here's the dragon in the monster manual you use.
Oh, perfect.
Because again, there's fire-breathing red dragons in Eldraine, but there's also blue-aligned dragons who might be more like a bronze dragon or like a moonstone dragon.
Right.
So in addition to the monsters that are here, there's lots of inspiration for pulling in monsters from other sources and weaving them together to represent Eldraine in your game in whatever way you want to.
What is the thing that you love about this setting the most?
I love the fairy tale whimsy of it. It's the same thing that, like, the first time Chris Perkins presented Wild Beyond the Witchlight to us and showed off the concept art and talked about his vision for the adventure, I was just like, this is so far outside of the D&D box. I love it. The whimsy of it.
Perfect.
The two designers who worked on this with me were Mackenzie Daramus and Carl Sibley. They both did an awesome job throwing together these cool monster designs in a pretty short timeline, so we're really happy to have it going out into the world.
I find that in D&D, like Ravenloft is a very creepy setting that has kind of this quirky kind of Halloween vibe, but sometimes I feel like the Feywild is even more so and even more dangerous, whereas like Ravenloft or anything associated with the Shadowfell is kind of oppressive. Feywild, there's like a different threat there. This is a place there are hags, or where you can have like a Gollum gingerbread man. Like,
Yeah.
there's a different type of potentially horror or fun to be had.
Absolutely. And the Feywild and the Shadowfell are mirrors of each other and of the material plane, but it's not like a good and evil mirror.
Yeah.
Or even a light and dark mirror. That sometimes the beauty and whimsy of the Feywild can be just as deadly as the overt spookiness of Ravenloft, and sometimes just as spooky. And you see that in the horror genre across the board, right? Like a lot of adult takes on fairy tales take a very creepy vibe to them because they're fundamentally horrific stories.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of these old fairy tales that we're talking about that this setting is very keyed into were like warnings to children.
Yes.
Like they were like kind of behavioral tutorials in some weird way.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why like everything has like a little lesson learned kind of vibe. I feel like that way for the Feywild as well. There's always like a weird like contract or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, be sure that you follow these rules.
Yeah. Of course, the beauty in both Magic and D&D in adapting these stories. Like, I remember in the first Eldraine set, there was a Goldilocks card where she was a bear hunter. She's got like a big axe or something.
I remember that. That was amazing.
And in the Hansel and Gretel story, I don't remember the name of the Gretel character, but she is going out to avenge her slain brother.
Yeah.
Right? So these aren't helpless children anymore.
I mean, I do love Magic's take, like, is like a little edgier on a lot of these like classical themes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for talking
My
about
pleasure.
this. I'm very excited to get my hands on this.